Every generation of Pokemon introduces a plethora of new abilities, some aimed for competitive, meanwhile others are meant to enhance the in-game experience. But what abilities do we think will be introduced in Gen 9? With a wide variety of mechanics to explore or new ones to create, there's so much untapped potential for these games ability-wise. So today, I want to explore my top 10 abilities for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. These abilities will have a plethora of uses, from being moves turned to abilities, answers to other abilities, and even something for your standard in-game only uses. If you enjoyed today's list, make sure to leave a like on the video and subscribe for more Pokemon Scarlet and Violet top 10s. Before we discover new abilities today, how about we discover an all-new mech game? Today's video is sponsored by Mech Arena, an arena shooting game you can play on your mobile device that lets you take control of a mech and experience the thrill of victory several times in less than 10 minutes. If you love shooters but just don't have the time to sit down and play anymore, well, you're gonna get a lot out of playing Mech Arena. Let me ask you this, what other game could you play that is this fun and satisfying in only 5 minutes? Yep, just 5 minutes from start to finish, with the action being non-stop. One thing I've noticed is that unlike a lot of other mech games out there, the robots you control don't feel super slow and clunky. Instead, just being snappy and really powerful without sacrificing the speed you want to see that lets games go by quicker. If you guys have played so-called reflex shooters in the past, I can assure you that Mech Arena just isn't the same as those. I've spent quite a bit of time playing this game, and it's definitely found itself at the top of my mobile gaming options now. I was never a big fan of mecha stuff before giving this game a try, but I've got to say now that I'm absolutely hooked. This month, Mech Arena is offering a huge schedule of events for its first anniversary, with tons of special events and crazy prizes to win. Those prizes, of course, include a new sniper weapon and a new pilot named Archangel. Plus, at the same time as Mech Arena's first anniversary, they've got their Season 9 Battle Pass running, featuring a litany of rewards and new skins. Mech Arena is completely free to play on both Android and iOS right now, and up on screen is my own personal QR code that will give you $25 worth of bonuses when you get into the game. I've got a link in the description as well that you can use. You'll get 1 Firelight skin, 1 Prodigy crate, and 1 Plasma Cannon 4 to help get you on the way to Mech Arena dominance. Also, if you act quickly, you just might be able to add me as a friend in-game and we could play a few games together. I want to thank Mech Arena once again for supporting the channel and for being such a fun game, and I hope to see you guys in there. Our number 10 new ability on today's list, I'm going to be referring to as Crisis. This ability would basically make the opponent inflicted with a status similar to the move Torment, where they can't use the same move twice in a row until switching. Torment as a move is a rather unexplored move in general, yet it has such a strong effect. I think it's mostly due to the fact that with any strong Torment user, you'd probably want a way to trap the opponent, as well as reliably heal yourself. I think as an ability though, you could actually finally make the most of this condition. With the ability Crisis, a Pokemon with some form of recovery and trapping move could utilize its ability in order to handle setup sweepers, as well as choice Pokemon with great ease. A Choice Scarf user, for example, would be forced to use Struggle every turn if it stayed in after being inflicted with this ability, which would be great for forcing your opponent into either sacking their Pokemon or swapping. As for setup sweepers, you could actually use this in 2 ways. Crisis would not only stop your opponent from freely setting up to +6 while you tried to take them out, while also making sure their offensive moves have to be more carefully planned. So that way, you can't get an opportunity to take out their sweeper. Despite how niche Torment is in general, I think the ability Crisis would actually be a very interesting concept, landing it at number 10 today. And the number 9 spot comes an ability with the name Temperamental, which would basically function as a reverse Moody. Instead of affecting the Pokemon with this ability, it would instead lower an opponent's stat by 2 stages randomly, while randomly raising one of their stats. We already know how ridiculous Moody can be. Even without Moody raising evasion anymore as of Generation 8, being able to change your stats by +2 every turn, even while lowering a stat by a single stage randomly in the process, you will eventually get to a point where your stats are all several stages higher, and you've become near impossible to KO. But how good would this be at lowering an opponent's stats? While you need to make sure your Pokemon and opponent both stay on the field while using this ability, even one correct stat drop could start a snowball in your favor. Being able to drop your opponent's speed or primary offense can honestly make the difference in how quickly you can or cannot take them out. If you can even keep the temperamental user alive for just 2 turns, you could most likely find an opening with your next Pokemon to take out the opponent, no matter how terrifying they once were. I'm honestly genuinely shocked with how Pokemon has so many gimmicky abilities that this ability hasn't been introduced sooner. I think it'd be phenomenal to see in competitive one day. At number 8 is our first more casually aimed ability, being Predator. I figured Predator would be able to function in a way that makes wild Pokemon easier to obtain. We recently got the ability Ball Fetch from Yamper, which would allow you to potentially re-obtain Pokeballs. But what about an ability that just allows you to catch Pokemon easier? I figured that having this make all non-legendary Pokemon 2 times easier to catch, and legendary Pokemon 1.5 times easier to catch would be the best way to balance an ability like this. We don't necessarily want to make the ability function as a pseudo Master Ball, however this could be fairly helpful when trying to get a Nuzlocke saving encounter or some sort of surprise shiny Pokemon you found on your journey. I think the best demographic, as previously stated though, would be Nuzlocke and Shiny Hunters. Especially for the Nuzlocke end. Having an ability early on like this would be great in order to help you fill your roster with stronger Pokemon without worrying about if you will have enough Pokeballs to do so. I can't remember how many times I've had to give up on a Nuzlocke encounter because I ran out of Pokeballs on my 3rd or 4th encounter. But an ability like Predator would be amazing for that. Even just a single encounter and a Nuzlocke can make a huge difference, even if it's utilized as a sack. And I think this ability would be a massive help to players early in their runs. And the number 7 spot on today's list is an ability I'm going to name Terraform. This ability would function similarly to Cloud 9, but instead of weather, it'd help ignore terrain. We currently have abilities that affect weather, stat changes, and even other abilities. But what about terrain? Terrain has continuously been a meta-defining option for teams. Whether utilized from the Tapus, Dynamax moves, Rillaboom with Grassy Glide, or even just abilities such as Surge Surfer from Alolan Raichu. And I think it's time we finally nerf it a little. The damage nerf we got in Generation 8 was a good start, but having an ability to help phase terrain would be huge for competitive. When comparing weather with terrain, we have a lot of similarities currently. We have moves and abilities to take advantage of terrain, abilities to set it up, and both have items to extend them as well. Yet only weather has an ability that actually ignores the current weather on the field. Terrain will most likely be here to stay, and Terraform, giving Pokemon a way to get around the newly introduced moves such as Expanding Force and Grassy Glide, which are crucial to competitive play, would be an amazing help to help combat how obnoxious these moves can be sometimes. Nobody wants to worry about Rillaboom blowing past their team with Choice Band Grassy Glide, especially with the grassy terrain set up. And I think Terraform would be the best way around that besides running another terrain setter of your own. Wrapping up the first half of our list, we have the new ability Heads or Tails. Similar to Crisis, I took inspiration from another overlooked move, or in this case, useless move, being Present. Present had a cool function of having a chance to either heal or damage your opponent, and I wanted to try making this work in ability form. The ability would, at the end of each of your turns, have a chance of either healing yourself by 25% or damaging yourself by 12.5%. I figured this would help justify the ability a bit more, since Present typically would be a less than favorable option. Meanwhile, at least the healing for yourself in this case would be more favorable than taking damage. With 25% healing though at the end of each turn, we did need some sort of potential risk, since that is basically the equivalent of using a move such as Life Dew for free every turn. I think this would be best utilized on bulky setup Pokemon that lack a more reliable means of recovery. Pokemon that would utilize moves such as Calm Mind or Bulk Up would be the best target of this, as they could have a way to passively gain back health in the earlier turns they'd be setting up, which could allow them the ability to get set up more easily. While I understand this would definitely be too risky for some players, I think if the Pokemon with this ability had a strong enough stat line, this could be an ability that would be well worth the risk. At number 5, I have another ability based on a more niche move, which I'll name Countdown. Countdown, I think, of the abilities I've taken inspiration from other moves, has by far the most interesting concept, as it would enable Paris Song immediately upon entering the field. With an ability like this, you could honestly redefine trapping in VGC and make it become a meta strategy again like it was in previous generations with Mega Gengar or Gothitelle plus Politoed on rain teams. If you lead off with this ability while partnered with a Pokemon such as Gothitelle, you could basically claim 2 kills if you played your turns properly, which in VGC is usually enough to make or break a game. I definitely will admit, I do think that of every ability on today's list, this is probably the one that treads the line of broken or balanced the most. But I do think that there are some actual downsides to be taken into account here. While I do think that this ability could become unbalanced, I think that similar to how huge power typically is thrown on Pokemon with low attack stats, you could throw this onto a Pokemon that is weak defensively. That way, it needs to at least ensure it takes a single hit and can't just rely on recover stalling until your opponent loses all of their Pokemon. Also, as far as singles go, you need to not only switch this Pokemon in, but also find a way to trap them in. So I don't actually think this would be uncompetitive there. Instead, I think this would be used as a way to force setup sweepers to switch. So the risk of being unbalanced really only comes in doubles in my opinion. Regardless, I hope Pokemon adds this ability in Scarlet and Violet, as I think it'd be a lot of fun to use. Next is an ability that is honestly a long overdue addition to the Pokemon games, which I'll be naming Spunk. You guys probably would have an ability like this on your lists as well, as this is my nomination for a special Moxie. While we have the abilities such as Grimnay and Soulheart, these are currently legendary exclusive. I think an ability like Spunk though would be a fairly easy one to mass distribute to Pokemon, and a special Moxie is long overdue. I think the clearest benefit a special Moxie would provide would be to special choice scarf users in competitive. We currently have several strong Moxie sweepers such as Crocodile and Salamence that are able to absolutely decimate the opponent just after a single KO. I think being able to give special sweepers this chance could honestly be a really well-deserved buff to them going forward, especially if Pokemon decides to add in my number 3 nomination. I think this would at least be a strong way to help special attackers before the next ability ends up harming them significantly. Speaking of our number 3, that ability is going to be our special Intimidate nomination, Menace. If you've ever played doubles, you'll know that Intimidate is easily one of the most influential abilities in the format, to a degree where it's almost mandatory to run at least one Intimidate user on your team. Whether you're using Incineroar or Landorus Therian, you can never escape this ability when it comes to doubles. But why isn't there a special equivalent? We have so many nerfs to physical attackers, but where are the nerfs to special attackers? Adding in a special Intimidate would honestly be game-changing for competitive Pokemon. I think they also honestly have the perfect candidate for this ability too if Pokemon decided to change its current abilities as of what we know from Pokemon Legends Arceus. I think this ability would be added in as the new ability for Enamorous Therian, which would honestly be an extremely fitting way to get this ability started in VGC. We knew how pivotal Landorus became thanks to this ability, but another genie that's more specially oriented running the new special Intimidate would be a nice homage to the origins of the genies in a competitive Pokemon about 10 years ago. We definitely need to see Menace added in Generation 9, and I think this would be the perfect way to introduce it. In the penultimate spot is an ability that is honestly pretty near even with our first one. However, with this field mechanic being slightly more advantageous than the number 1 option, I decided to put this one here. This ability I would name Deception, and it would be our long overdue automatic Trick Room ability. Similar to how the weathers and terrain have abilities like Drought and Electric Surge, I have been dying for an ability to set Trick Room. This would be the ultimate fix for Trick Room in singles, which is currently so obnoxious to try to fit on a team in OU. While Trick Room can work in OU, you basically need to ensure you have 2 to 3 Trick Room users on any given team. Meanwhile, having a Pokemon with the ability Deception would fix this. While Trick Room is extremely popular in doubles, I don't actually think this ability itself would be too broken. Trick Room has no actual items to extend its field presence, so I don't think that the ability alone would actually make this field mechanic broken. Not only this, but you'd still need to make sure your entire team works in Trick Room, since if you lost your first couple of sweepers, you'd end up losing the speed advantage randomly, bringing in a fast Pokemon like a Tapu Koko while Trick Room was still set. This ability, I think, would really only truly make Trick Room skyrocket in usage in singles. However, I think it'd be a nice way to slightly improve it in doubles as well, even if it's not as necessary thanks to the support moves Trick Room teams typically have, such as Follow Me, to ensure the move gets set up properly. And the number 1 ability on today's list, I have the other speed controlling field option being covered, which is our automatic tailwind ability that I'll name Tempest. This ability would be fairly similar to Deception, except it'd be more beneficial for boosting speed instead of reversing the speed tiers. I did mention that Tailwind had a slight disadvantage over Trick Room earlier, which would actually be best described if you have both moves present at the same time. If player A uses Tailwind and player B uses Trick Room, player B will always have the advantage at any given time, since their Pokemon would now have an even wider margin of difference in their speed tiers. Despite this advantage over Trick Room teams, I think Tempest would still have some fairly cool uses though. We see even in doubles how, despite Trick Room teams are so prevalent, Tailwind still will always find a way. This is typically a strong strategy on Pokemon around the 80 to 110 speed areas, so giving this to a Pokemon with a similar speed tier would be invaluable. Especially if it had some kind of bulk, you could potentially utilize Tempest to pull off weakness policy sweeps in both singles and doubles with ease. Also, with speed now automatically changing, you could potentially hard switch in your Tempest Pokemon on any given turn and allow yourself to last ditch while making the speed tiers favorable to your side and claiming a KO on a Pokemon that's otherwise going to take you out. I think this is the perfect ability for really offensive teams, and I think it's a such needed ability concept for competitive, hence why I put it at number 1 on today's list. Well, that's my list of the top 10 new abilities for Scarlet and Violet. If you have either better abilities or even just better ability names for anything I covered today, make sure to leave yours in the comments below. I'd love to see how creative you guys truly are. Welcome back to the outro, folks, your favorite part of the video. Thank you for enjoying another Mystic Umbreon video. We made it through the end of the 8th generation, and now we begin the long trek into late 2022 where Pokemon Scarlet and Violet await us. It's a whole new world we'll live in, but we still gotta catch them all. However, there's still a ton of videos to do and experiences to have until then. If you're interested in more Mystic content, check out my TikTok and the Mystic Umbreon Shorts YouTube channel. If we get the 10k followers on TikTok, I'll be doing a viewer's choice video. If you like Genshin Impact, check out my Genshin channel Tevachinary. So if you all enjoyed, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more. See you next time.